Well, good morning, everybody. Oh, that's pretty good. It's not bad. How many people went on the ship last night? Yeah, I thought it was one of those 3-hour tour Gilligan Island things, but turned out it was just Ricky Ricardo playing congas, and so on. So I had my Ricky Ricardo shirt on last night, so I had a good time. By the way, TBM Council, thank you so much for letting me just share our journey, our hewlett-packard journey for the last couple of years in IT. Actually, I think, tomorrow, Ralph Laura, who's now on our team, on our leadership team, is going to be here as well. So please, if you get an opportunity, you'll get to hear some great thought leadership out of Ralph. So what I want to do is just walk you through what we've been through the last 2 years and how that ties to what you're trying to do with this whole thing called TBM. And with that, you got to think about how the industry is changing. George did a beautiful job of talking about the fastinistas, the scammers on are you really doing IT or digitizing and so forth, or are you a digital master, right? I thought George did a great job on that. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to borrow some of those, R&D some of those slides. It's called Rip Off and Duplicate because it's very, very cool. But what we've been looking at hewlett-packard is that this whole thing called the new style of IT. And it's the bimodality of what we have to do. You're thinking about the old way of doing stuff, and you got to try to do things the new way, and the stress just becomes incredible. And when you look at all this information that's coming at us, and what's going to be happening in the future, it can be mind-blowing for an IT leader saying, wow, did I really want to do this for the next 10 years or so? And the answer should be yes. You should be excited about it. Because what we want to do as IT leaders is really become this new, making things simple. If you think about what Larry said today with the CEO, what did the CEO want? Clarity. Why does it cost so much? How do I know I'm spending the right amount of money? How do I know those processes are the right processes? And unfortunately, if you've worked around industry, and I've had the fortune to work around industry, what I've seen IT do is make the simple complex versus making the complex simple. And if you recall what Larry was talking about, the labeling of a couple of his systems, fast, rapid. Well, one of the things that we need to be doing as IT leaders is driving that agility through the organization. Really creating the velocity through the organization so our businesses can outcompete its competitors in the marketplace. And that's where you get the higher value for the cost of IT. And that's what we need to be thinking about. And that's what this whole conference is bringing to us. So I talked about the pressure. How many of you feel the pressure of all your enterprise initiatives? And these are just a few. And then you got to deal with these mega trends that everyone has to follow that new shiny thing. And they have to have it in their operation. And then you got to deal with the bottom, the legacy. The legacy isn't going away. It's going to be there for quite some time. As a matter of fact, if you looked at your IT budget today and you looked at that chart and you try to identify how much of it is the bottom portion of the chart versus the higher portion, the bottom clearly outweighs what you're spending on the new initiatives and on these mega trends. Now, eventually, and that's this whole bimodal thing, right? Eventually, it will change. You will be doing these other things, and those things, these mega trends and these enterprise initiatives, they will become legacy. How many of you worked on Y2K a little while back? Remember what we were focused on? Do you remember the conversations? We said COBOL is going to be dead after Y2K. COBOL is a hot skill today. Think about that. Think about what you pay for people to run those old legacy systems. Oh, we'll just send it offshore. We'll outsource it. But it ain't cheap anymore. It is actually expensive. So the point I'm trying to make is we're going to live in these two environments for quite some time. And if you're not careful with really understanding what it costs to run these two environments as you transition and get into this new services-oriented type world that we're going to be working in the years to come, you're going to be left behind. And you don't want that to happen to you. Our company celebrated its 75th birthday this year. In 1939, January 1st, Bill and Dave incorporated Hewlett-Packard in Palo Alto, California. Matter of fact, if you come to visit us, you'll be able to see in one of our buildings their offices. And you'll get to see the garage. Now that garage is a two-car garage. We will have two different businesses, two Fortune 50 companies that will be born out of that garage. One will be Hewlett-Packard Incorporated. It's going to deal with the consumer and the commercial side for personal systems and printers. The other side is going to be Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, and it's going to focus on what's important to you, the CIOs and the IT leaders in this audience. And that is the reason Meg and the board believed it's time now to split the company. And I'm sharing that with you at this point because I just want to share this is the size that we're dealing with today that Ralph and myself and several others get to work on for the next 12 months. And what I also want to share with you, when you are either acquiring companies or divesting or splitting, it's incredibly important to know what things cost. What's the cost to serve? So I get the show back, I get the charge back, but if people don't believe that information, and if you've not been an IT leader that's been transparent, and if you're going to go through one of these kinds of transformations, if you will, it's really, really difficult. Now, the other reason I share this chart with you is we do have a huge infrastructure. And what I love what our group has done in the last 2.5 years is we've been working with our product teams in the labs. We're either customer zero, we're beta testers or alpha testers, first customer in some cases. But we really drink our own champagne without getting a hangover. Now, for some of you on that ship last night, you might be going, don't bring that up, right? But if it works for us in this huge infrastructure, it's going to work for you. And the beauty of it was Meg Whitman, because of her collaborative leadership style, has really changed the way our company works together. And even when our two new companies become two new companies November 1st of next year, Meg will be the non-executive chairman of HP Incorporated, and she'll be the CEO of Hewlett-Packard Enterprises. So there'll still be that common leadership. But in the last 2.5 years, our IT function was not working with the product teams. And you would think, how can that be? You're a technology company. That's part of the fun part of working in a technology company. And we've made that change. We've made that pivot. And it's worked extremely well for us. So we had an opportunity where we were able to do some showcasing. So let's talk about the data center just for a sec. We had a phenomenal story where our prior CIO went from 86 data centers down to 6 next generation data centers. And then we called it the six-pack. So it was in 3 different locations. When I came on board 2 years ago, I was sitting down with the IT infrastructure leaders at that time. We thought, uh-oh, we're going to have to grow. Everything is just running hot. We don't have enough power. We're going to have to grow. So we thought we were going to go from 6 to 8. Well, we showcased this new technology called Moonshot. And it's Moonshot servers, small little servers, low voltage, runs on Atom processors. And what ended up happening was when the data center guys did the math, they said, you know what? We believe we can actually go from 6 data centers down to 4. And then we had these portable data centers called EcoPods. We were able to go from 6 of those, and now we're going to be going to 4. Tens of millions of dollars of investments is going to give us hundreds of millions of dollars of savings. This is why you have to really understand TBM. Is because to be able to make these bold moves, not just with the disruptive technologies, you need to understand what your cost basis is. So you were able to then articulate, if I spend X millions, we can bring this to the table. The second area was the immediacy to the cloud. For us, we migrated from Siebel to Salesforce.com. Within 6 months, we had 26,000 people on Salesforce. And now that Ralph Laura is on the team, his team is now driving what that next generation is going to look like. Every quarter, we're either putting other adjacencies or driving more improvement for our sales team. So we have a better relationship with our customers. We moved to Workday. We did that in 15 months. We had over 300,000 people, big bang, on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening at 6 p.m., March 23rd. And at that time, was able to get into multiple devices within the first hour of being up and running. It was phenomenal. So that's the software as a service part. There was other stories like that. But then we needed to think about how we provision hardware in our environment. And we were built for slow. We weren't built for speed. And we really needed to be a lot quicker and be able to show our customers how we provision and do things differently. So with our own internal private cloud, we were able to go from 2 weeks of deploying databases to a matter of minutes, less than 5 minutes. Servers took weeks, now we do it in minutes. The whole stack within a few hours. And that's what you want to be able to bring to the table so you can innovate faster. And I know all of us are in different places on this journey, but in order for you to be able to have this kind of conversation with your CEO and CFO, you need to be able to understand the math. You need to understand the value you're bringing to the table when you're doing these things. These aren't just hype. This isn't just fun stuff we got to go do or it's the next great thing to go do. This is actually allowing us to innovate quicker. So as Rob said earlier, it says Hewlett-Packard is inventing itself again. That's right. We all should be reinventing our companies again. All of us are going through a company that is wanting to transform, becoming more of a digital company in this digital economy. Incredibly important. And as you go through the other areas, security is top of mind for every IT leader I talk to. And as well as big data, and then of course, mobility. Okay, could you move my PowerPoint slide, please? Thank you. So this year, we thought, okay, the last couple years, we were transforming what we had in IT. We stabilized the environment, but we needed to think about how do we get to that next level. So we started bringing some other folks from outside onto the team that had different thinking, that was really known for innovation. Ralph's one of those leaders, as we talked about earlier. But we also needed to make sure we had clarity around our financials. Without TBM, without that framework, you're not going to have clarity. It was amazing sitting down with our CFO and our CEO, Kathy Lesjak and Meg Whitman, and walking them through what we were demoing for them, of how much detail, how much information we can give you or roll it up so you can see it at whatever level. And I'm telling you, when you're able to do that, it changes the conversation and it is powerful. Because once you do that, then they start trusting you on the other things you want to make happen. So you heard about it today, understanding the transparency and the clarity. But in order for us to not only be responsive and to simplify our environment, they needed to make sure they could trust us to be good stewards of the company's assets. Remember, your IT budgets aren't your budgets. Those funds belong to the company. You're the steward of that funding. And if you're unable to do some of these things, you're not going to be able to have fun times on the bottom end where you're innovating and really driving value in the company. And then in our case, we want to be able to showcase what we've done to our customers. Because every time our customers come to our executive business center, what do they ask? Well, is HPIT doing this? How are they doing? How are they using this equipment? What kind of value do they get? And if we're unable to articulate that, it's not a good thing for our business. And then lastly, and this is the people part, if you're going to embark on this journey and deal with the whole bimodality of what we're dealing with, of the old style of IT to the new style of IT, and this whole framework about TBM, you better be an inspirational leader. You need to inspire your organization. You want to have an organization, a culture in your organization that wants to do these things, not that they have to do them. Some of the things that we're going to do to drive this execution, and it's broken up into two areas. We have the what and we have the how. And these are some of the work streams that we look at it. We actually call this program our Velocity program. And even prior to the split announcement, we were already doing this work. But this now will be a very big component of what we do in our separation management office, of how do we separate our company. Because we've done this work. You know, Larry talked about understanding your applications in your environment. And we've done this work through these work streams. And we have this information. But that's knowing what's on the servers is one thing, but knowing what it costs is another. And to be able to change the behavior. And I love the example where he said, you know, you spend $10,000 on this particular app, and you guys haven't even generated $10,000 of profit in this business. You really want to spend that? I mean, I love that. That's how it changes the conversation. So for us, as you can see, you know, we're driving more and more to the cloud. By FY17, we believe we will be probably 40% in our private cloud, and we'll be 50% software as a service. And about only 10% of our environment is going to be the old traditional, the old style, the on-prem. And those are going to be very selected why they're in those particular areas. And then we'll go through our network transformation and so forth. But the bottom line here is you see right below it, you see finance and security. Well, that finance piece is what we do with technology business management. And if we don't have clarity and transparency, we would struggle with the what. So as our group has continued to look at how we drive our journey in TBM, it was incredibly important for me to be the key sponsor. Now, when I started 2 years ago, I knew I needed it day one. The problem is we had bigger fish to fry. So you have to pick your right time. because it's incredibly important. You don't want to start and then have it just fizzle off and just be the program of the day. It truly needs to be transformative. And so I brought in a new finance leader to support us in IT within a couple months on the job. And we walked him through this, and he came to me and says, I need this. I said, great. I doubt if we can make it a priority right now, but there's going to be a perfect time when to do this. But let's get it ready. And working with the TBM Council, working with the organizations, we were able to move forward. But I will tell you, it depends on your organization, it depends on the size, but there's that muddy middle in the organization that will prevent you from doing this. Don't know why. Maybe because they feel like they don't want the transparency or they don't see the value. Everyone has their reasons or their excuses not to go do it. But as the CIO of an organization, you absolutely don't want that to fail. Blow through the muddy middle, get that clarity, and make it happen. It's incredibly important to do that. You know, you look at the IT supply chain. This is an example of that. You have the supply and you have the demand. And, you know, I heard it said similar. I think it may have been George that said it earlier. But if they can't trust you with the small stuff, he called it the non-IT stuff or the non-strategic things. I call it they can't trust you with the small stuff. They're not going to trust you with the big things. And so when you get this IT supply chain right, and you have clarity around what your strategy initiatives are, and you demonstrate that you do manage your suppliers well, and you partner well with them, and you have the right skills in your organization that can do that, and they have transparency around the information they have, you'll be successful. Infrastructure and operations. I was at an organization that years ago, there's no way they wanted transparency because people will know that we're not running this well. Now, if you're one of those folks, then okay, I get it. But your successor will eventually do this because the word is out that leaders understand they have to have clarity around this. The other area that gets a lot of pushback in an organization is the project management side or the PMO. And because they go through the mechanics and sometimes they may not really understand how the operations work. And so when they're pushing these things, they'll get pushback or, oh, God, it's the flavor of the day, that kind of thing. Support them. Help them through it. Or do a rotation program in that operation, bringing some people that understand the operation into the PMO and move the PMO folks into the operation so they learn it. Rotation programs are fabulous. And it really does open the eyes of the organization. And in our case, the IT finance leader does report in finance. Matter of fact, he did such a great job with this activity, just got promoted, and which is fantastic. We were happy for him, and we just brought in a new leader in the last couple weeks. But the point is, you really want that objective view from the finance team talking about information technology. I was glad to hear Larry say that earlier. It's incredibly important because the CFO, even though I'll have a discussion about our budgets and so forth, after I say what I'm going to say, they always look at our finance leader and it's good. It's okay. And, I love it because his name's John Faust, and he's fabulous. And he goes, Ramon, you're just the color man. I'm the details guy. And so one presentation, we actually flipped roles where I was the detail guy and he was the one adding color. And I said, hey, how did you like adding the color? He goes, I like doing the details better. He goes, you continue doing the color. But it's incredibly important for this to change the conversation with senior leaders. I mean, it just is. It changes the dynamic. Now you don't talk about this stuff. You don't talk about, well, I really want to understand these numbers. You start talking about what's important to the business. And if you're not having that conversation, then your company's doing the wrong thing. And that happens at every level within our organization. So it's our business unit chief information officers working with the business leadership teams. So the conversations they're having is about the value we're going to contribute. And when we talk about value, we capture what that type of value is, and we make sure it's baked into the budget. Because if you think you're going to go back and retrieve, or, after we get value realization, we'll make the adjustment. I mean, how many people, when you're done with the project, you actually go and take the time to determine whether or not you created value? You're on the next project. You're working the next big thing. Nobody's going to have time for that. So you have to do the work up front. It's all about business outcomes for us, right? I mean, George talked about the Venus and Mars thing. If we're not having this kind of a conversation about driving business outcomes, about what we're doing is really going to have an impact on the business that you're supporting, then you probably won't be in your role much longer, because this is what leaders expect. They expect this along the whole way, whether it's the business leader, whether it's the finance leader or the IT leader. We all are leaders of a function, but we all are business leaders at heart. Now, I have a friend of mine who's actually a writer, Peter High. He said this one day. He said, Ramon, he says, the common language in business is finance. Now, unfortunately, he said that in front of my CFO, and she just loved it. But the point is, when we are talking about business, that common language, the currency we need to be articulating in our environment is finance. And what better tool, what better framework to have that common language than what we do with TBM. And that's the beauty of it. I remember moving into IT back in the 90s and moving from a program management role of a non-IT function where we understood our budgets, we understood how the Air Force looked at the budgets, and all these things. That worked for a defense contractor. I moved into IT, and I went into another planet. I'm like, what is all this stuff? So I had to learn a whole new language. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, aren't you a function within our own business? Yeah, but this is how we do it. It's been like this for years. We're not changing it. Back in the day when we were data processing, that's when we started doing it. And now today when we're information resource management, this is how we do it, and so on. And I was just in shock. But I didn't have the fortitude to make the change. And I really didn't have a common framework to work from. So I thought it was just the company I worked for. Then I moved off to another company. It was even worse. There was no clarity. And matter of fact, when I sat down with the business president, he says, why do you guys communicate in this way? It doesn't even make sense to me as a business leader. He goes, can you get me the decoder ring? So we actually had to take everything we did in IT, translate it into a term that he would understand. Now, we were one of 4 groups in this particular company. So we were the only ones communicating in that one language. Now, where in the heck was TBM back then? I mean, this has been a need for so long. And I think that is why last year we had 400 people at the event, at this conference, and this year we've almost doubled the size. That's fantastic because there's a need for this. And it's not just within IT, it's within the businesses. And so the beauty of it is not only that we got transparency, we have the information, but now when you're in a large company like ours, you can benchmark within your own company to determine what apps, how they're performing against another set of apps in another part of the business. And then want to understand, wow, what did that person do to get the cost down, or is running so efficiently and effectively and it's got high net promoter scores on those particular apps. Why? What are they doing right? And then, of course, you do external benchmarking. Again, when you have that common language, the taxonomy that's common across the board, you change the whole way you look at IT. And that's the beauty of the TBM framework. And then you can start having the right kind of conversations focused on business outcomes. I love what Larry's CEO said. I don't know what TBM is. And frankly, he probably really wants to say, and I really don't care. Because what he cares about is what's important to his business. And when you're having these conversations, that's what you want to do. You don't want to be dealing with a bunch of data nonsense. You want that single source of truth. You want a tool that gives you good planning and good actuals and good visibility. The people side. IT professionals as business leaders. It is not an oxymoron. It's not. Every IT leader, whether you're a technologist or you're a project manager or you do an administrative function within IT, you're within a company of some type. It could be a technology company, it could be a consumer packaged goods, it could be a defense contractor, it could be a retail store, financial services, healthcare, media, across the board. What we do is transferable. I'm proof of that. I've worked in multiple industries because it's a transferable skill. What TBM does for us is allow us not to have to relearn new financial terminology, taxonomy across the board. And so as you think through this, it's not only important to deploy the tools and set up the dashboards and run the reports, it's to train your people on how they can learn this information and how they can communicate this information to help develop them. You know, IT, our technology, is disrupting every business. And the role of the CIO or the IT professional is to go drive that and get maximum value so you can outcompete your competition. That's what capitalism's all about, right? And that's what we need to be focused on. Think about what are you doing to make your folks in your organization the next great IT business leaders in your organization? Are you helping them with the soft skills? Are you giving them rotation opportunities where they have an opportunity to work with other functions than the area that they're comfortable with? Do you have a program that's set up where they are learning continuous improvement, customer insights, and all these other things that is important for that new style of IT? Well, the Technology Business Management Framework is one of those things that they need to learn. It needs to be on that curriculum, if you will. So one of the things that we had to do within our organization 2.5 years ago was we needed to bring in strong IT leaders and have them embedded with the business leadership teams. And that worked really well for the last couple years. And now we still have the same structure, but we decided to do something different. We're bringing in, like I said, we brought in a few other leaders to help some different thinking in the organization. It's okay to mix it up, but it's also very, very important to promote from within. And so the beauty of developing people within your organization is they do want to feel like they're invested in. And when you do things like what you're about to do with this conference and invest in your people on learning this, you just now made them more valuable. And that's important. And people can walk away with that. A couple years ago, we put the slide together because we said all the things we did on the left side was important. We needed to be a service provider. Matter of fact, you need to be really good at it. You need to be good at optimizing IT. You need to be good at cutting costs. But that's not enough. That's not the discussion you want to be having with business leaders. What you want to be is very, very customer focused. And that's what I love what Meg Whitman brought to Hewlett-Packard was the customer centricity discussion wasn't just the discussion. She actually lives it. She is a role model on how to go do this. So when I see it or my leadership team sees it, we said, wow, it's important for us to meet with our external customers. It's incredibly important. And no matter what company you work for, as the IT leader, and if you're demonstrating you're driving innovation, your customers want to know that. So what we were shifting was being this from being a service provider to truly being this value creator. I like to think of us as a knowledge center. What I've seen in the organization is there isn't a week that goes by or a day that goes by where we're not getting a phone call asking, has HPIT seen this problem? And if they have, can you have them just give us a call and tell us how they fixed the problem? And that ranges from what we do in the data center, from security, from big data, from whatever. But we changed the way our folks thought. They started focusing on the customer. Now we are getting awards within our EBC as the #1 function that gets invited to come and speak to customers. In 2012, we maybe had a little over 100 customer engagements. And that could be one-to-many or one-to-one. So for example, this would be a one-to-many, but it would only be counted as one. And what we will close by the end of this year is almost 1,000 customer engagements from our organization. Totally changed the culture, changed the mindset. And now people are like raising their hand. I want to go. I want to meet with customers. I want to tell them the great things that we're doing. And that's how you start thinking about enabling the business to power performance in the organization. Because people think differently about the projects they work on. Now you're going, NASCAR? What does this have to do with everything you just said? It'll come into sharper focus in a minute. So if we could play the video, please.
On a typical race day, you start in the morning, the fans will start to fill into the track, and then as the excitement starts to build, you hear that chatter, and then as the green flag drops, that's the start of our race.
NASCAR is about excitement. You've got millions and millions and millions of fans.
As the CMO of NASCAR, my goals are to grow this sport.
Understanding what our fan base is thinking, what they want, and to have a tool to help us get there is really important.
So we partner with HP to help us build a tool, a platform to be able to kind of listen to all of those different communications.
To understand what was happening in our sport from a dialogue standpoint.
This Fan and Media Engagement Center is the first of its kind. Nothing exists like it in all of sports or entertainment. It's changed how we do business significantly. By far, HP was the best end-to-end solution that we had out there. And that was the consulting services we thought were better than everyone's.
On the hardware side, HP was able to deliver the blade servers we needed, the 3-part storage that we needed to be able to store all this data, the servers to process all this data. On the software side, it was about the autonomy platform and being able to take the power of the idle engine, the Explorer, the Media Bin platform, and then leveraging other tools like Fusion Charts and Tableau software to be able to give us that visual presentation, be able to deliver all of the video walls, the touch screens. We can walk up and literally interact with the wall itself and be able to drill in on content that we're able to see rich results from. Fan and Media Engagement Center allows us to collect data, understand what that means, analyze it, allows us to respond faster, and at the end of the day, drives results to our fans. It was more than just Twitter. It was, how do we collect all of those different outlets of news media, bring them together and talk and hear as one single voice so that we can understand what's happening with our industry. At the beginning of the year, one of our large auto manufacturers launched a new car. Right as they made that announcement, we were able to go to their president and hand him a report that tracked exactly the conversations that were happening as that announcement was coming out in real time.
So you can see, for example, during a race, what are fans saying about Jimmy Johnson or Jeff Gordon or Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Tony Stewart, and why. We can take all that information and have them understand what's moving the needle for that particular driver.
It's interactions that happen during the race. So if a driver wrecks, that conversation, we're able to understand that and kind of monitor what's going on.
What things are important? What are we going to take action on? Make sure you get to Fox and have them create more explanation around that.
It's not just data, it's actionable data. Data that helps sell more tickets to their racetracks.
We truly are just scratching the surface on this thing. As our needs continue to change from what we're trying to accomplish from this big data, then we'll change with it, and it will just continue to get better and better for us.
We are in the digital economy. NASCAR is a digital business. It's not a bunch of guys watching cars run around a track and just be drinking beer, right? I mean, how many have gone to NASCAR? Have you had an opportunity to use the media center? Would you ever think that NASCAR would be a digital business? What did he say? It's not just data, it's actionable data. And that's what we're trying to do here at this conference. It's just not data. It's actionable data. And with that, welcome to the new style of IT.